There is a 94-year-old shepherd in Sardinia named Antonio. He walks 4 miles a day across rocky hillsides. His blood pressure is 118 over 74. His doctor ran his arterial scans twice because he didn't believe the results the first time. Antonio has never used vegetable oil, not once in his life. That's not a coincidence. That's a mechanism. And today we're going to follow it all the way to your kitchen. Sardinia is one of 5 blue zones on Earth. It sits off the western coast of Italy, and it has more men over 100 years old per capita than almost anywhere else in the world. Researchers have been trying to explain this for decades. They talk about the terrain, the social structure, the red wine, but one variable keeps appearing in the data that almost nobody talks about: the fats. Specifically, the 3 fats that Sardinians have never used, and the 2 they have used every single day for over 3,000 years. Here's the thing. We were told for most of the 20th century that fat was the enemy, that saturated fat clogged arteries, that the solution was to replace animal fats with plant-based oils, vegetable oil, corn oil, soybean oil. That advice changed everything, and not in the direction we were promised. Let's start at the beginning. Your arteries are not pipes. That's the first thing to understand. They are living tissue. The inner lining of every artery in your body is called the endothelium. It is 1 cell thick. And it does something remarkable. It produces a molecule called nitric oxide, which keeps your blood vessels flexible, prevents clotting, and signals inflammation to stay low. When the endothelium is healthy, your arteries expand and contract the way they should. Blood flows, pressure stays down. The whole cardiovascular system works. When the endothelium is damaged, it stiffens. It becomes a site for plaque. It loses the ability to regulate itself. The question is, what damages it? Oxidized fats do, specifically polyunsaturated fatty acids that have been extracted at high heat, exposed to light, and stored in plastic bottles for months before they reach your table. That is the mechanism, and it is documented in the literature. Now let's name them. The first is refined soybean oil. Soybean oil is the most consumed cooking fat in the United States. It did not exist in the human diet before 1910. It is extracted using a chemical solvent called hexane, deodorized at temperatures above 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and then bleached to remove the dark color that the heat creates. At that temperature, the polyunsaturated fats in the oil oxidize. They form compounds called aldehydes and lipid peroxides. When you cook with this oil and eat those compounds, they enter your bloodstream and attack the endothelial lining directly. A 2018 study from the University of California, Riverside found that soybean oil consumption altered gene expression in the hypothalamus in ways that affected metabolic and neurological function. The mechanism is not mysterious, it is chemistry. Sardinians have never used it. The second fat is refined corn oil. Same extraction process, same oxidation problem. And there is an additional issue specific to corn oil. It has an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of roughly 46:1. Your body needs both omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. But the ratio matters. When omega-6 is dominant by that margin, your body produces pro-inflammatory signaling molecules called eicosanoids at a rate that keeps your immune system in a low-grade state of chronic activation. Chronic inflammation is the root mechanism behind arterial disease, type 2 diabetes, and several cancers. The data on this is not contested. The ratio in the traditional Sardinian diet sits closer to 4:1. That gap is 40 years of arterial age. That is not a metaphor. The third fat is margarine and any partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. Most people already know about trans fats, but here's the number nobody explains to you. Trans fats don't just raise LDL cholesterol. They simultaneously lower HDL. That double action is uniquely destructive. No other dietary compound does both at once. A Harvard study following over 80,000 women found that replacing just 2% of daily calories from trans fats with unsaturated fats cut coronary heart disease risk by 53%. Sardinia never industrialized its food supply the way the West did. Margarine never entered their pantries. Their grandmothers never bought it. And their arteries reflect that unbroken chain. So we have 3 fats: soybean oil, corn oil, and hydrogenated vegetable fat that oxidize inside the body, drive chronic inflammation, and attack the very tissue that keeps your cardiovascular system alive. None of them existed in any meaningful quantity before the 20th century. All 3 are now in almost every packaged food on the shelf behind you. Antonio the shepherd has none of them in his house. Not one bottle, not one wrapper. But his pantry isn't empty. He uses 2 fats instead, and what those 2 fats do inside the body is just as specific, just as documented, and just as important as everything we've covered so far. So, what does Antonio use instead? The first is extra virgin olive oil. And I want to be precise here because the distinction matters more than most people realize. Not light olive oil, not refined olive oil, extra virgin, cold pressed, from olives harvested in October before they are fully ripe. That specific oil contains a compound called oleocanthal. It inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes that ibuprofen does. The mechanism is identical. A 2005 study published in Nature by researchers at the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia identified this and calculated that 50 milliliters of extra virgin olive oil, roughly what a Sardinian uses in a day, provides anti-inflammatory activity equivalent to about 10% of an adult ibuprofen dose, every day, for a lifetime. But oleocanthal is heat sensitive. Refine the oil, and you destroy it. This is why Sardinians don't fry everything in olive oil. They drizzle it raw over food after cooking. Over bread, over beans, over vegetables. The compound stays intact because the oil never hits high heat. That detail is not incidental. It is the whole point. The second fat is sheep and goat dairy fat, specifically the fat inside traditional Sardinian pecorino cheese and fermented sheep's milk yogurt. This fat contains a fatty acid called conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA. CLA is produced in the gut of ruminant animals when they graze on grass. It is not present in significant amounts in grain-fed dairy. It is not present in vegetable oil at all. CLA has been shown in multiple trials to reduce body fat accumulation, improve insulin sensitivity, and inhibit the growth of arterial plaque. A meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2007 found consistent evidence for its role in reducing cardiovascular risk markers. The Sardinian sheep graze on wild herbs, grasses, and mastic shrubs on open hillsides. The CLA content of their milk is among the highest measured anywhere in the world. That is not luck. It is a food system that has been intact for thousands of years. Here's how we know this is about the fat and not just the genetics. Sardinians who emigrate to northern Italy or the United States and adopt a Western diet begin showing cardiovascular disease markers within one generation. Same genetic profile, different fat supply, completely different outcome. This is what researchers call a migration study. It is one of the most powerful tools we have for separating inherited biology from dietary cause. Because when the genes travel but the food stays behind, the protection disappears. The genes didn't change. The oil did. That is the clearest answer the data gives us. Now let's close the loop. You probably can't move to Sardinia, but you can audit your fat supply. And that audit is the highest leverage thing you can do for your cardiovascular health right now. Here's the 3-tier protocol. Tier 1. Remove. Go through your pantry and pull any oil with the words soybean, corn, cottonseed, canola, or vegetable on the label. These are in almost every packaged food, every restaurant fryer, every processed snack. Start reading labels this week. Tier 2. Replace. Bring in extra virgin olive oil for cold use and raw application. For high heat cooking, use grass-fed butter or ghee. Their saturated fat structure is stable at temperature and does not oxidize the way polyunsaturated oils do. Tier 3. Add. Find a source of real sheep or goat dairy, traditional pecorino if you can. Full-fat grass-fed yogurt as a minimum. You are not adding fat for the calories. You are adding CLA for the mechanism. Antonio isn't doing anything complicated. He eats what his grandmother ate. He uses the oil his grandfather pressed. The food system he lives inside has never been broken. That is the gap. Not genetics, not luck. A fat supply that was never industrialized. Start with Tier 1 this week. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 3 fats are you removing first? And subscribe to the Blue Zone Way. Every week we go deep on one zone, one practice, one system.